Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातीरवनचारी यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज विहारी गोपीजनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज विहारी गोपीजनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम रामा हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम रामा हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे जय राधा मदन मोहन राधे राधा मदन मोहन राधे जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल। Hare Krishna. I welcome you all to the second session of our topic Devayani and Sharmishta. So, we will start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 18, Text 25. Durmana Bhagavan Kavya Paurohityam Vigarhayan Stuvan Vrittim Cha Kapotim Duhitra Cha Sayayau Purat. Durmana Bhagavan Kavya Paurohityam Vigarhayan Stuvan Vrittim Cha Kapotim Duhitra Sayayau Purat. Durmana Bhagavan Kavya Paurohityam Vigarhayan Stuvan Vrittim Cha Kapotim Duhitra Sayayau Purat. Translation. As Shukracharya listened to what happened to Devayani, his mind was very much aggrieved. Condemning the profession of priesthood and praising the profession of Unchavritti, collecting grains from the fields, he left home with his daughter. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When a Brahmana adopts the profession of a kapota or pigeon, he lives by collecting grains from the field. This is called Unchavritti. A Brahmana who takes to this Unchavritti profession is called first class because he depends completely on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and does not beg from anyone. Although the profession of begging is allowed for a Brahmana or sannyasi, one does better if he can avoid such a profession and completely depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for maintenance. Shukracharya was certainly very sorry that because of his daughter's complaint, he had to go to his disciple to beg some mercy, which he was obliged to do because he had accepted the profession of priesthood. In his heart, Shukracharya did not like his profession. But since he had accepted it, he was obliged to go unwillingly to his disciple to settle the grievance submitted by his daughter. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमां विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So today we shall continue our topic from where we have left behind in the last session. So this is from the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada has given us is very, very special because of the purports that Prabhupada has written for us. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a Paramahamsa Samhita. It is for those who are very pure at heart. It is said in the Bhagavatam, Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayonmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krute Kim va parairishvara Sadyo hridyavarudyate yatra krutibhi shushrushubhi tatshanat. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a Paramahamsa Samhita. It is meant for Nirmatsaranam Satam. That is, one who is 100% pure at heart. This is a word-to-word translation that is given in Bhagavatam by Srila Prabhupada. And in his purport, Srila Prabhupada actually writes that it is that literature that is meant to be relished by those who are above competitive sense gratification. If you read the purport, you will come across these words, who are beyond competitive sense gratification. So, I have my own deficiencies and shortcomings in actually representing and actually speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. Still, I shall try for my own purification. for speaking and hearing Bhagavatam purifies one's heart. And the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam, the point is, just as compass always shows north, the very purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam always points to pure devotional service. And if one actually has to read Bhagavatam from any other versions, which is just the text, the verse, and the translation, it's rare that one finds this point. But it is by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada's beautiful purports, that we actually understand what Bhagavatam is trying to tell us. Hence, it is said that when we read the purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, one should read it as if Srila Prabhupada is writing a personal letter to you, and then read it. That's when you actually understand what it is speaking about. So, with this, we will just start our session. So, the pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam, they're very interesting and they're thrilling, but they're not just some kind of pious entertainment. They're way beyond. They have a very deep essence hidden in them. They always take us to the point of ultimate conclusions of all Vedanta. That is surrender to the Supreme Lord and pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So how does one understand that? By attentive and submissive hearing. See, just as, for example, the whole pastimes that we have been discussing about Devayani and Sharmishta, it might apparently seem to be something that is more thrilling than a soap opera. Something that you cannot even find it in some of the most exciting novels. But then, please understand, this is a pastime that is narrated by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. When Parikshit Maharaj was sitting there with a 7 days death notice. So, why would Shukadev Goswami speak about the fight between two girls? It has a very deep significance. So please be attentive as we go through the entire pastime till the end to understand what is the wisdom that Bhagavatam is revealing us through this very important narration. So, there is something called passive hearing. When we read Bhagavatam or hear Bhagavatam in a very passive way, there's hardly anything that we benefit from. So passive hearing means, you see, probably especially when we are just trying to hear the whole thing on a mobile. We just are very relaxed about it, and because we're not sitting in association of devotees, so the whole technology has its own positives and negatives. But then, to get the full benefit of hearing Bhagavatam, it has to be an attentive hearing and an active hearing, not merely passive hearing. So what is active hearing? Active hearing is you're hearing with a listener's heart. I mean, you're hearing with a applier's heart. So when you're hearing with an applier's heart, you do get some genuine questions. If you see, the whole Bhagavatam consists of the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami. In fact, this whole episode of Devayani and Sharmishta begins with a question of Parikshit Maharaj. In fact, at various portions of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj asks relevant questions, and the very question actually takes us deep into some beautiful pastimes. Like in 10th canto, Parikshit Maharaj inquires about why was there one day absent. One whole year that was absent. Then Shukadev Goswami starts narrating about the whole pastime of Brahma Vimohan Leela. So in that way, hearing should be attentive and active for the maximum benefit. So I will share with you something very interesting. This is from the teacher's and learner's perspective, how the whole hearing and applying takes place. So look at this pyramid. What happens at the very beginning? These are all the features of active listeners. So yesterday when I was asking some questions in the group, some of you have given such wonderful, brilliant answers. It just speaks about how attentive your hearing was. So the attentive hearing leads to remembrance, memory. Yeah, that is about recalling facts that has been stated. This is the first step of attentive hearing. So what happens after that is there is understanding. Understanding is it's further deeper. You go deeper into the subject matter and then apply. That means you try to gather this concept and see how these things work in real day life. And then comes the important point called analyze. So this analysis is this the top three: the analyze, evaluate, and create. These are the higher levels of hearing and understanding. So analysis, what is analysis? Analysis is about, in crisply speaking, analysis about the 5 W's and 1 H. I will explain what it is. Let's say, for example, we will take the last week's session, the fight between Devayani and Sharmishta. Let's analyze the whole situation. So I said 5 W's and 1 H. So first W, what happened? What happened? There's a fight between Devayani and Sharmishta. Okay. When did it happen? So it happened during the daytime when Lord Shiva was passing by along with his consort and on the bull. Then where did it happen? So it's where, the kshetra is very, very important because this whole thing gives us the context of the situation. So this happened in a lake, beside in a garden, and there was a beautiful lake, and that's where it happened. So what, when, where, who are the people involved? This is again a very, very important understanding to understand the whole context. So who are the people involved? Devayani and Sharmishta. But who are they in reality? So Devayani is a Brahmini. She's a Brahmana girl. And Sharmishta is a Kshatrani. She's a Kshatriya girl. Here is important information. So when you're analyzing the situation, you got to know the who of it. Who is Devayani? Who is Sharmishta? So she's a Brahmani. That means she has certain qualities. Qualities of cleanliness, austerity, and being little overly clean, etc. And actually, also the background of Devayani, how she was cursed by Kacha. So all that now the personality of Devayani as such. Then Sharmishta. Who's Sharmishta? She's the daughter of a king. She's a princess. She's a Kshatrani. What are the qualities of a Kshatrani? Yuddhe chapya palayanam. They never turn back. Show their back at a war. They are in Rajas as Kshatrani. Now you got to know the natures of these two people. You have a glimpse of it. So this is analysis. So we understood what is the situation, where did it happen, when did it happen, who are the people involved, and then why did the fight happen? Why did the fight happen? Because Sharmishta accidentally put on the clothes of Devayani. Okay. And the last question is 1H. That's how did it happen? How did it happen is the whole background about, okay, one day they were walking, they came by the lake and they were taking bath as a matter of, sportive activities. And then Lord Shiva came and this whole thing happened. So this is the analysis. So this is a very, very important aspect of understanding any scripture. Not only scripture, even your own subject matters, whatever subject you're studying. Because analysis gives us understanding of the context. And scriptures have to be understood contextually. If not, we take things out of context and try to see them in isolation. And when you see isolation, you only get half-truths, or what you end up with is half-baked knowledge. So analysis. So analysis should be followed by synthesis. Or here, what you see in the pyramid is evaluation. So analyze and then evaluate. So evaluate or synthesize implies You gather different uh, aspects of the knowledge that you have and try to bring in and make some a quintessential essence out of it. That's synthesis. There is, for example, this whole fight happened between Devayani and Sharmishta. What is the synthesis that you can arrive at with all the things that have happened, with all the analysis that you have done? What is your conclusion? So, synthesized knowledge is your own understanding as it is applied. For example, I would say this whole fight of Sharmishta, it's something just childish and it happens. So, why did I arrive at this? It happens because I have some information from Bhagavad Gita that the nature of this world is that it is dukhalem, it is ashashvatam, okay. And every living entity, when the living entity comes in contact with material nature, because of the being surrounded by a passionate environment, they act in ways even that is against their own wish and will. So it's a nature of the material world and it's a nature of the ego that people do come and they fight and quarrel. It's a human nature. So this is my synthesis from all the understanding that I have from scriptures. And application, how do you apply this into day-to-day life? So in day-to-day life, when we come across these fights and quarrels, so we need to understand that it's very much a part of any relationship that these quarrels do happen, but they have to be understood in a more mature way. How do we get a mature understanding of these? Let's see with the examples of some scriptures. So before we go there, we'll just do a short recap. I think recap, I have done it mostly. Last week we were discussing about the whole pastime of Devayani and Sharmishta. Who is Devayani? Who is Sharmishta? And how they were very good friends. And later they had a big fight and quarrel, and they used a lot of very heavy words on each other. And to the extent that Devayani called Sharmishta a dog, and not her dog, she indirectly meant that you people are like dogs. And Sharmishta was no less, she said that you are like crows who are waiting for what we are throwing, just snatch and receive it. And the whole pastime ended last week by Sharmishta throwing Devayani into the well. You can see that in the picture. So that's where we ended that. So if we have done a small short analysis of the whole pastime, let's see some what we can decipher from this, how we can look at this. We will take an example from the Ramayana. So in Ramayana, we see that there's this pastime of Lord Ram. This is during the Aranya Kanda, the section of Ramayana where Lord Ram and Sita are in the Paranashala, in the kutir, and Lakshmana was always like a guard for them. And Lakshmana was such a great servant of Lord Ram that it is said he never slept a wink in the whole of their stay in the forest, and he was only guarding. So at that time, when Lord Ram and Sita were sitting, a beautiful deer has come. So we all know this pastime. And Sita was so captivated by the deer because it was so extremely beautiful, extraordinarily beautiful. In fact, it is more beautiful than it should be. So it's too beautiful. So Sita looked at it with a lot of affection. But then Lakshmana started looking at it with suspicion. Why? Because he was always in the duty of a guard, so he looked at everything with that suspicious eye. The deer was it's more beautiful than it should be, and it was not having the right chemistry with its fellow deer and the remaining animals. So he understood that it can't be a normal deer. He even hints Lord Ram that this does not look like a normal deer. It looks like something, a magical animal. But Sita, she was so captivated by the beauty of the deer that she asked Lord Ram, "My dear Ram, I'm so captivated by this deer. I really want this deer. I want it as my pet. And actually, when we go back to Ayodhya, I want to gift it to Kaushalya Devi because it's really so adorable. And Lord Ram, of course, he was such the best of husbands. He was so his heart melted by her request. He felt he was so obliged to her because ever since they started living in the jungle, Sita had never asked for anything, and she was with him through all the hardships. And first time she asked something, he felt very obliged to fulfill that desire. So Ram says, "Okay, just give me a minute. I will go bring the deer." So Lakshmana keeps on warning, but Ram says that I'm obliged to go and bring. Please be on guard with Sita. So Lord Ram leaves, he chases the deer and he goes. And the deer runs with giant leaps, and at one point it disappears and it reappears at a different place. And at one point Ram understands that this is a Mayavi, that is a magical deer. So he, in fact, chases it more to actually kill that because he understands that it's not the proper. I mean, uh, it's not a normal deer. It's in some kind of a demon in disguise. So Lord Ram chases and he shoots the deer, the arrow. When he shoots the arrow, it is actually Maricha, and the deer falls almost dead. And by the time it's leaving the body, he screams with the voice of Lord Ram, saying, "Hey Lakshmana, please come and save." And his voice was, he just imitated the voice of Lord Ram, and it was more real than the real Ram's voice. So again, Sita was pained at heart. She was shocked. She was feeling very threatened. She couldn't stay normal. She started telling Lakshmana, "Lakshmana, please go and see what happened to Lord Ram." So Lakshmana says, "Please don't worry, Mother Sita. He's my brother, Lord Ram. He is the greatest of Kshatriya. Nobody can fight him. He's indefatigable. Nobody can conquer him. He has killed the biggest of demons. So do not worry." But Sita could not stay peaceful. And as Ram was not returning back, her anxiety increases more and more. And she coaxes Lakshmana, "Please go and see what happened. Please go and see what happened." And Lakshmana denies her every request. She says, Lord Ram will come back. And at that time, Sita, wanting to really push Lakshman, she tells words that really shatter Lakshmana's heart. She tells, "Lakshmana, you have some ill intentions toward me. That is why you're just waiting that if Ram is killed in some mishap like this, then you want to actually take advantage of that situation and enjoy me. That is why you're here." Then, when Lakshmana hears this, his heart shatters into a million pieces. Actually, Lakshmana, he has only, till date, he has only seen the lotus feet of Mother Sita. He never even looked beyond that. And Sita, when Mother Sita has spoken these words, it was like he couldn't recover from it. Then, not knowing what to do, he just draws a Lakshman Rekha around. It's a circle actually, all around the entire kutir, and he leaves to search for Lord Ram, being totally shattered. Then at that time, we all know what happens. Back at the Parnashala, Ravana comes and he abducts Sita. And when Lakshmana comes and sees Ram, Ram is terrified seeing Lakshmana. "Lakshmana, what is this? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be guarding Mother Sita. Why are you here?" Then Lakshmana explains what happened, that these kind of words are spoken. Then Lord Ram doesn't take it seriously. All this is some kind of a trick that is played, and just to keep us away from Sita, let's go and see what happened. And Lord Ram says, "Do not take seriously what she has spoken, because what she has spoken is out of affection for me." So this beautiful book that is written by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, in that he writes that Do not ascribe intention to what is spoken in tension. For example, what Mother Sita spoke was very ghastly. Some words like that for somebody who is so dedicated, who has dedicated his life for the service, and such shattering words could actually break a person's heart for good. But then, just by understanding that it was the intensity of that situation that made her speak like that and not ascribing any intention to it, actually Lakshmana could get over it. In fact, Valmiki Ramayana explains that after the whole episode of Lord Ram going and conquering Ravana happens, and then Lord Ram and Lakshmana meets Mother Sita, then it's the whole thing is just, it just passes by because nothing was taken seriously. It's forgiven and forgotten. In fact, it is said that actually Mother Sita spoke these words as actually a karmic reactions to Lakshmana doubting Bharata's intention when he was coming with his entire army to surrender to Lord Ram. That time, Lakshmana doubted that probably Bharata is coming for a war with Lord Ram. So because he doubted his intentions at that time, this was a kind of a reaction to that. But nevertheless, the lesson that we learn from here is that never ascribe intention to what is spoken in tension. Because in tense situations, people speak many things. And if we try to add an intention to it, we will really get lost and the relationship breaks. Every time it happens, the relationship breaks because whenever harsh words are spoken in a tense situation, we tend to attribute some intention to it. For example, in the whole episode of Devayani and Sharmishta, very, very harsh words were exchanged between both of them as friends. She spoke about, we are the great Brahmanas. We are respected by even Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you have worn my clothes just like a dog came and stole the clarified butter. And Sharmishta, she was no less. She said, she came like a serpent seething with anger. She said, who are you? You are just beggars who come to our house for all the alms that we throw. And she threw her. She showed it in action. So if you have to ascribe some intentions to all these harsh words, probably the friendship will never patch. And that's what actually we see in the later situations. But what is it that made the whole situation good in the case of Ram and Sita and Lakshmana? The center of both of their lives is the service to Lord Ram. Lakshmana was a devotee of Lord Ram, and Mother Sita was also devoted to Lord Ram. And whenever the people have a common center of service to the Lord, then the apparent quarrels that happen, they do not matter. They leave behind easily and they carry on, knowing the nature of the world, nature of the ego, and knowing the final and higher purpose. The relationships work in that way when they are centered in around God. So we also see a pastime in Ramayana further in Kishkinda Kanda. This is a pastime of Sugriva. So what happens is Sugriva was crowned the king because actually a big misunderstanding happens between Bali and Sugriva becomes banished, and Bali uh, takes the throne, and later Sugriva forms allies with Lord Ram, and Ram gets the he wins the battle and he crowns Sugriva the king. And Sugriva in turn promises Lord Ram that I will help you in searching for Sita. So what happens? He will be about to go for the search, but at that time, the Chaturmas, right now we are in Chaturmas, right? The rainy season begins. So the Lord Sugriva says, my dear Lord Ram, the rainy season has begun and the searching is impossible right now. So let the rainy season pass by, that is 4 months. And after that, we will carry on with our searching for Mother Sita. I will help you with that. And I have mighty army. They will go in all the 4 directions and search for Sita. So Lord Ram, being convinced, says okay. And in fact, Sugriva invites Lord Ram to come and stay in his opulent kingdom. But Lord Ram, because He understands. He does not accept the proposal because he is in Vanavas as was promised to Kaikeyi. So he's in the exile period. So he cannot enjoy opulences. So he was true to his word. And he says, I cannot stay in opulences. I will live in a nearby cave. So this place is still there near Hampi. It is near Pampa Sarovar. This is called Malyavanta Raghunath Parvat. We have been there. It's a very, very beautiful place. So Lord Ram spends the 4 months of Chaturmas at this place, waiting in separation from Mother Sita. And during this time, what is happening at Sugriva's end? Sugriva, all this while, he was in banish. That is, he was living in forests and caves because his brother was Bali was enjoying the kingdom. But after many years, he was again crowned the king, and he got back all his aristocracy. He got back his royalty, all the services and all the comforts. He starts enjoying like anything. He steeps, he dives deep into sense gratification. There's wine, women, music flowing all over, and all the royal opulences surrounded with all servants, and you name it, they have it. So many a times when a person gets into this comfort big time, they forget the purpose. And that's what exactly happened with Sugriva. So in between, actually, even Hanuman and Tara they come and remind Sugriva that, my dear Sugriva, you have a purpose to fulfill. You're supposed to help Lord Ram in searching for Sita. So he does send some messengers to search for Sita, and again he comes back, and again he gets back into his full to's enjoyment. So this time the Chaturmasya ends, the rainy season ends, and there is no news from Sugriva. And Lord Ram goes and asks Lakshmana, what happened? We are waiting for Sugriva and there is no news for him. And Lakshmana starts going to Sugriva. Why is there no news? And in fact, he becomes very angry. Imagine the Lord personally there and he's waiting for you to come and complete the service that you have promised. Can you imagine? And Lakshmana, who represents a spiritual master, he comes and with a red face and red eyes, what happened? And he comes to the palace of Sugriva. And as he's entering the palace of Sugriva, all the guards see Sugriva and they go and inform Sugriva that Lord Lakshmana is coming and he's bubbling with anger. And when he sees Sugriva, Sugriva was in such a position that in one hand he was having a liquor bottle and he was in full enjoyment mood. But when he sees Lakshmana, he's like, oh God, what did I do? What was I up to? And he really feels very regretful of his behavior. And he says, and Lakshmana was about to take charge into the situation. That's when Tara comes, the wife of Sugriva. And she says, Lakshmana, my dear Lakshmana, please forgive Sugriva. Please try to understand his situation also. After a long time, he got back into these royal opulences. And great sages themselves give in to sense gratification. What to speak of a monkey? Please be kind upon us. We will really go full-fledged in search of Sita. So with the prayers of Tara, Lakshmana says, okay, fine. And he goes back. So, but then what is Sugriva is as such a great devotee of the Lord. But what happened in this situation is just a circumstantial behavior. We cannot judge Sugriva just based on this situation alone. If you see in the later part of Ramayana, actually, Ravana tries to indirectly, in a very cunning way, tries to make friendship with Sugriva and promises him, we'll give you our full support. All the Vanaras and Rakshasas should become one. And you can really extend your army like anything. Both of us can really flourish. Now you join hands with us. But Sugriva says, my master is Lord Ram and I live or die only for him. So this was Sugriva's integrity and loyalty towards Lord Ram. That was what a great devotee he was. But during that time, it was just a circumstantial behavior. So understanding this is very important. We should never judge people by circumstantial behavior. So, being in the modes of passion, this material world, we behave in ways dictated by the modes. And sometimes even greatest of greatest people can slip away from the normal, from the norm of devotion. But that slip is occasional and it should not be taken seriously and they should not be judged based on that. And and we have to learn to see the overall picture. If you see just Sugriva in that situation, it's like, my, what is this? He has promised Lord Ram, he broke the promise, and he's indulging full scale in sense gratification. If you judge by that, then probably we can never understand Sugriva, who he is. But see the whole picture of who Sugriva is, what a devotee he was, what was his reaction, I mean, what was his loyalty and integrity towards Lord Ram. See the whole context, the whole picture. That's when you understand a person. Similarly, when we have quarrels and fights with others, it is to be understood with our friends or with our partner or with our anybody who's dear to us. Yes, the moment that fight happens, it really leaves a very bad taste in the heart. It hurts. Sometimes words hurt worse than swords and knives. They can really pierce through and tear us apart. But just remember these two things. Never ascribe intentions to what is spoken intention. Do not label some intention. This person spoke to me because he does not like me, or she never loved me. Maybe she loves him more than me, or etc. etc. The number of mental speculations that happen in a very brief period of time, we just become so entrapped in our mind. We become a prisoner in our own mind that we start speculating so much, one after the other, one after the other. And these days, more so with WhatsApp, the kind of communication that happens, my God, if we don't put the proper smiley finish, the other person will think something else only than more than what is communicated, and relationships even break. A small example, let's say you're writing in the WhatsApp saying that I will not come. Probably you genuinely have said I will not come, and leave it, no smileys. Then the person who receives, if they're not mature enough, they think, oh, this person is saying I will not come, maybe they have better things to do, or maybe I'm not on their priority list, maybe they don't want to come. Okay, the same word, I cannot come, and you put a smiley with a sad face. Then they'll understand, oh, this person is genuinely feeling bad that they are not coming, now they're satisfied. Can you imagine? This is the kind of communication that's happening through WhatsApp. And you can imagine what is the depth of the relationships that two people can have through these kind of communications. These days, I see that people relate more through electronic devices than in person. In fact, if you really meet that person in person, it is better. You can communicate better through your, iPhones on than sitting and talking to each other face to face. But unfortunately, that's not how relationships work. Yes. So let's go ahead. Yeah. So basically, yeah, these are two very important lessons that we need to learn to protect our relationships or our friendships. That is, never ascribe intentions to what is spoken intention. Firstly, even before that, understand that quarrels do happen. It is the nature of the material world. It is the nature of the ego. It is the way this whole world is designed, the way the modes of material nature are designed. And we are all embodied and we are operating here. That's number one. Number two is never ascribe intentions to what is spoken intention. And number third is do not judge people by circumstantial behavior. If you just follow this, trust me, these are the golden rules for saving any relationship and have fulfilling relationships all through life, be it wife and husband or closest of friends. And this is as far as understanding is concerned. And let's get into some skills that we can acquire. It's always important to have some practical skill set ready within our hands to actually what to do in that situation, in that heat of the moment. So, so this is what the whole title of our session is: learning to respond rather than react. Sometimes we use this word respond and react in a very interchangeable way, but actually, both of them have a world of difference, and it can make a world of difference in our own lives. I give a small example. For example, there is a beggar who came, excuse me. So, I mean, he came with the begging thali, Madakolam. So you put a coin, or a person puts a coin in the beggar's thali. So is it a reaction or is it a response? How do we know? We cannot know because we cannot look into the mind of the person. But it is a reaction if the person is just putting the coin in the thali just because people are looking at him and he should give an impression that I'm a charitable person. But how do you know if it's a response? The person actually has taken some time to look at the person, feels empathy for him, that, oh, this person cannot earn money on his own. Let me help him by giving some money that I have. Maybe it will help him live better, and give him some Lakshmi. That is response. So the act may be same, but there is a sea difference between reaction and response. Reactions are more like a knee jerk. Those who are medical students, they understand what's a knee jerk. You have that knee hammer, you hit it on the knee hammer, tang karke the knee comes, the leg comes. It's a knee jerk. It's an immediate reaction. But a response is a thoughtful action. You process it, you think about it, and then respond. So there's some interesting differences that you can see in this table, the difference between reaction and a response. So reaction, what happens? It comes more instantly. And a response comes more slowly because you spend some time to process the whole situation, you're thoughtful about it, and then you respond, as we just spoke about. Reaction is more like a knee jerk reaction. So reaction is driven by beliefs, biases, and prejudices. So that's there in our unconscious minds. So in the past example of that beggar, I told you that he might have put the coin just because he thought, oh, there are people around me looking at me and I should look charitable. So in his subconscious mind, somewhere, probably because of the past experience, something is registered in the mind that I people will think that I am charitable if I give money, and I want to give that look of being charitable. So that input has already gone into the subconscious mind. So that's how he's acting based on this biases and prejudices in the mind. So that's a reaction. But response is something that is based on information from both the conscious and subconscious mind and the unconscious mind. This is little psychology stuff. Conscious mind is what the kind of intelligence that you gain by reading knowledge books, and unconscious mind is something, it's a storehouse of past experiences. So some information is sent there. So based on that, you process some thoughts and then you respond to it. That's a thoughtful response. Then, what is again reaction? Reaction doesn't take into consideration long-term effects. This is very important. When you're reacting, we don't understand what the consequences of this is, whether we are shouting back or whether we are using some harsh words. We are just totally out of control, or we are giving into some kind of a lower level of our own selves. That is, let's say somebody has invited us for a party. We just said yes with by some kind of a peer pressure, let's say. That's actually reacting. But what is response? Responding is actually, who is the person who has invited me for the party? What kind of party is this? How is it going to benefit me? Is the group safe? Is it not safe? Is the place where we are going, is it a decent place or no? Analyzing all this and then saying yes or no is a response. But then saying an immediate yes because you want to follow what your peers are doing, that's a reaction. So there is a see difference when we train ourselves to respond and not react. It might sound very simple, but it can save us from a lot of damage that can happen to us and to our relationships and to our lives. Just this learning how to pause and process the whole thing and then responding. And the last difference between reaction and response is reaction is survival oriented. It's mostly defense mechanism. Just like anger, somebody is shouting at you, give it back. Shout more, use more dirtier words, and just show them what you are. Tit for tat, give them back. So if you're regretting later, sometimes even uh, shout back at if you shout back at parents, our elders, our seniors, superiors, we don't understand their intentions towards us, and sometimes we give it back to them. The beauty is that the Lord has made such an arrangement that people cannot see our thought, cannot hear our thoughts. Imagine if that were to happen, if somebody can hear our thoughts, that would be the end of all relationships. So Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji writes this beautiful sentence saying that there is a gap between the thought and the word. And this gap is utilized by intelligent people for self regulation in a way that they don't give in to the lower nature, but they express themselves by a higher nature. That's very important. So that the pause that we take between the thought and the word, and then regulate ourselves, align ourselves with the higher intelligence, and then react with the higher intelligence. I mean, respond with the higher intelligence. That makes a person a virtuous person. And response is more ecological. It takes into consideration the well-being of those around. So when you're responding, it's not about not my survival, because the first thing is defense mechanism. It's instinct. It's uh, the four janma mrityu. No, what are these four things? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. These are all instincts common to Pashubi Naranam. They're instincts common to man and uh, animals. So this defense is an instinct. It's an animalistic instinct. Somebody comes to fight with us, getting back is a defensive instinct. But then humans are best given this higher intelligence to process the whole thing and then to show compassion or to forgive, to react through a higher nature. So that's what makes a human being higher than animals. So when you respond, you're more ecological. You just don't think about yourself, but you also think about the good of others. And you're not in a defensive mode, but you're in the mode of bringing in good for everyone. So that's the difference between reaction and response. If you have understood the difference, you have an excellent skill set ready in your quiver. So this is like a very good feather in your hat. So this is more like a self-help, a psychology related tool. But scriptures are vast. They give us much more profound knowledge and in-depth understanding. So now we understood what is reaction and response. Now the question is how to be in a mode of response. So we all understood that we have to press the pause button. But how do we press the pause button? Sometimes the pause button is pressed so much that it might result in kind of an self-inflicted violence. You cannot ventilate out your anger and you just gulp all the anger. Even then, that's not good. In fact, many of women have so many health issues because they're not properly ventilating their emotions. You go and talk to a bovine therapist or a metaphysical therapist, they speak about how not ventilating certain emotions of anger and pain actually accumulate in your nervous system, and they bring in some neurological problems. So basically, responding does not mean just gulping some emotions and not reacting. It means properly channelizing those emotions in a way that it does not cause harm to others. But to actually do this, this is not spoken in self help books, but this is spoken in our own Gita. To actually do this, a person needs spiritual strength. So many a times, people act in ways that, sometimes we think, I cannot believe it's me. Looking back and looking at ourselves. Have you ever felt that oh my God, when I'm angry, I'm worse than a devil? People might be seeing the brighter side of us, but you ask your parents or your spouse the real side, and they will only smile out of their compassion and love, of course. So that real side, it's a little difficult to face, but it's the truth that we do have. So Arjuna had the same question. Arjuna asked Krishna that why is it that a living entity who is so pure acts in ways that they are just forced by some external, they're forced to act in a sinful way. Why is that it happened? So Krishna told that Kamesha Krodesha Rajoguna Samudbhava. It is happening because of the mode of passion. Kama, lust, and Krodha, anger. They too are coming from Rajoguna. They're coming from mode of passion. So when you are in passion, these kind of knee-jerk reactions are very common. So what is being in passion? So passion is simple. It is about, let's say, every day you're eating avakai or a lot of mirchi food, lot of spice. That's what you eat, and you're associating with passionate things. Your eyes are watching, let's say, passionate movies with full of violence and uh, extra whatever. So when your senses are in contact with passion, and Bhagavad Gita beautifully explains the food in the mode of passion, the entertainment in the mode of passion, movies come under more entertainment in the mode of passion, uh, the kind of taste, the colors that you like, all these, there are very beautiful descriptions. And then you can see in this, what is Rajas, what are the qualities. So these are the qualities. There's a lot of movement, activities, a lot of energy, excitement, desire, and basically passion means uncontrolled desires. So whenever you're unable to control something, either your urge for lust or your urge to eat palatable things, or it's an uncontrollable urge, that's passion. Your urge to fight or your urge to give it back. So this is all passion. Of course, passion also includes a positive activity, but something that's uncontrolled, that's passion. So from this comes kama and krodha. That is lust, and unfulfilled lust is anger. When does anger come? Anger is nothing but unfulfilled expectations. You have some expectations from the person or the situation, and or the expectation that I have to be respected, and that expectation is not fulfilled and frustrated. That's when it leads to anger. So, what is the remedy for all this? Is simple: situate oneself in sattva guna. So, it is the choice of the individual or living entity that everybody is who's in the mode of passion. They can either degrade themselves into mode of ignorance or work to elevate themselves into the mode of goodness. So mode of goodness is difficult, that to regulate oneself, to be self disciplined, to to have sattvic food. It's not very enjoyable, but it is very good to have. In fact, sattvic food is very good for the body and mind. No agitation. Your gut is totally happy when you're feeding it sattvic food. So rise to the mode of sattva or goodness, and true to its word, It actually makes a person feel so satisfied, happy, and all these what we saw in reaction, that does not happen when you're situated in mode of goodness. You're more in mode of responding than reacting. It's a matter of practice. So practicing on the regular basis brings one to sattva guna, and when one comes to sattva guna, it's easier. All these, if you, it's very naturally seen that the quarrels reduce, the agitations of the mind reduce. There is a lot of clarity in thought and in life. So that sattva guna is one such answer to all these that the scriptures give. So Bhagavad Gita is full of this amazing knowledge and enlightenment. So coming back to our whole story, it's already 7. So what happened after Devayani was thrown into the well? So after Devayani was thrown into the well, King Yayati comes. Now, who is King Yayati? King Yayati is the son of King Nahusha. So Nahusha has fallen down from the heavenly planets, and because of which King Yayati is given the charge of being the king. And King Yayati, he actually is going around the whole world to see if everybody is fine. And destiny, how destiny can really change situations. Destiny brings him to this well. And when he sees that, oh, there is some lady inside the well, and he's a king, and his nature is to help people when they are in trouble. So he sees and he looks into the well and he sees Devayani. And he's like, oh, and he admires her beauty. She's really beautiful. And what he does, he gives his upper cloth to her and holds her hand and pulls her out of the well. And Devayani, as soon as she sees Yayati, then she gives her heart to him. She falls in love with him. And she says, he's the person. She tells him immediately, O king, now that you have held my hand, you have to please marry me. And please don't be worried that it is going to be a pratilo marriage, that you're a Kshatriya and I'm a Brahmana. I'm already destined. I'm already destined for that. So then Yayati is in a quandary. I mean, because he was attracted to her on one side, but then he was worried about the pratiloma, marriage between a superior and not equal happening, because he's a Kshatriya and she's a Brahmana. Actually, the marriage can happen between a Brahmana boy and a Kshatriya girl. That is a favorable marriage, but it cannot happen otherwise, according to scriptures. Then she'll say, don't worry, my father will take care of it. And she will go. She goes back to her father, Shukracharya. And she goes back to Shukracharya, and what does she say? Generally, they say called daddy's girls. Now, anything happens at school or college, and they go back to their dad and say, dad, what happened? And they start complaining. So similarly, Devayani goes back to Shukracharya and says, my dear father, you know what happened? This is what Sharmishta did to me. She threw me in the well. And Shukracharya, he was so sold out to his affection for Devayani. And more so because right from her childhood, her mother Jayanti was never with her. After she was born, Jayanti left, and she left to the heaven. So she was growing under the care and shelter of Shukracharya. So that's the reason he feels all the more affectionately drawn towards his daughter, and responsible for her, and obliged to fulfill her desires. So, and if you see today in the purport, he says, he feels regretful in his heart that Now, I'm in such a position now. I have to go and beg the king. I should have been a person who is like a kapota, the pigeon who takes grains. That means who goes and begs, like because that's the nature of, that's the way brahmanas and sannyasis live. They beg, and this begging is like, it's not because you don't have anything and you just have to get begging. It is a way of expressing one's desire for, I mean, one's dependence on the Lord. And in fact, from whomever they beg, the people who give them, who donate to them, they receive a lot of pious credits. In fact, they beg to uplift the humanity at large. That's a higher understanding. But for them, for a sannyasi or a brahmana, begging means expressing their complete dependence on the Lord. That's what Srila Prabhupada so beautifully writes in this purport, that Shukracharya feels sad that he should have depended completely on on the Lord, which he missed out, and he's doing a priesthood under the king Vrishaparva. So he feels obliged to fulfill the desire of his daughter and to get some justice for her daughter for all the heavy insults that she has faced. So Shukracharya takes his daughter and goes to Vrishaparva, the king. Now, Vrishaparva is a disciple of Shukracharya. In fact, if you remember in the last week's story, Kacha was killed, right? So, Vrishaparva was one of the chief person in plotting for the murdering of Kacha so many times. So he knows Shukracharya that he can do anything for his daughter Devayani. And Devayani, so they had this past understandings of each other's personalities and the individual pressures they can face. So Vrishaparva, when he understands Shukracharya is coming, then he understands this, Devayani might have gone and complained, and he might be obliged, and now I have to fulfill his desire. No, I cannot displease my spiritual master. So he was like, as soon as Shukracharya comes with that wrath on his face, Vrishaparva goes and falls at his feet. And he says, my dear Shukracharya, I'm sorry, kindly forgive us. Please tell me how we can serve you. And so Shukracharya says that I am obliged to my daughter and I have to fulfill her desire. So Vrishaparva asks, so what can we do for you? And then in a very dramatic turn of events, what was the desire of Devayani? She wanted that Sharmishta become her servant maid along with all her maid servants and come with her as a maid servant after she gets married. And Vrishaparva says, okay, so be it. May your desire be fulfilled. Now, you may question, how is that Vrishaparva had agreed that his daughter Sharmishta can be given away as a maid servant to Devayani? But here, Vrishaparva gave more importance to pleasing his guru than actually getting his daughter married to probably a prince. So this is a regular Kshatriya stuff that used to happen earlier. The alliances are made for greater political reasons. Like for example, the daughters were married off to certain kings for bringing in some political alliances to make political allies. So in a similar way, Vrishaparva has said okay to the daughter because he was more careful about not displeasing his guru. So fine. But then by actually accepting Devayani as a maid servant, accepting Sharmishta as a maid servant, this was a major blunder and mistake they had done. Because Sharmishta is a Kshatrani. She has a Kshatriya spirit and she can never be a maid servant. It was totally against her nature. So it was a very wrong decision and wrong move. And the price of this that Devayani had to pay for it was huge, which we see in the later part of the story next week. So what we understand through this is it is very important to understand each other's nature in relationships and to make lasting relationships. So Today we have learnt about a brief summary. I just want to go through. We learnt about important things that make we understood the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam, how it is a Hamsa Samhita, the various pastimes in Bhagavatam speak about, always point to the glory of pure devotional service. And in the context of the fight between Devayani and Sharmishta, we learnt about what are those some golden principles that can keep relationships stable. Being those principles being how we should understand the context of a situation. We should not ascribe intention to what is spoken intention. And third is we should not uh, judge people by circumstantial behavior. And then we later on came across understanding the differences between responding and reacting, the skill set that we all need to develop. And we spoke about how Shastras and Bhagavad Gita give us a more deeper understanding about how this vrat, this anger and all are coming from Rajoguna, and how it is favorable to be situated in Sattvaguna by regular spiritual practices. And being in Sattva Guna can keep us more in a responding mode than a reactive mode. And then we spoke about completed the pastime of Devayani, how she gave her heart to Yayati, and then she complained to Shukracharya about Sharmishta, and they went to Vishaparva, and she sought kind of revenge by taking Sharmishta as a servant maid for the rest of her life. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.